Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday Talk. My name is Marina Steagal, and we are going to talk about today about the myths of Spiritism. So this is based on this book, which is the Gospel According to Spiritism. This was written by Allan Kardec, who's a French philosopher, and he was very pragmatic. So he wrote five main books, which we study in the Spiritism philosophy. And he talked about, in the beginning, he explains his approach. He said, look, there are many aspects of Jesus' lives, like, his life as a prophet, the precepts that started, the church, his life as a man. There are a lot of things that people argue on, but the one thing that nobody argues on is his morality, right? And he says, so I'm going to stick to that. And that's all this book is different chapters here talking about forgiveness, love, compassion, mercy, and the morality aspect that Jesus brought us. So today we're going to talk about, and why are we talking about the myths? Because these are things that we hear, that it's easy to talk about. We see them in conversations. And if we don't pay attention to them, they will become a reality. So we are going to debate 5 things today, which I call the myths of Spiritism. And we're just going to have a dialogue on, whether they're true or not, and what do we know based on these books that can help us understand them better. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing some slides. Let's see if we can see them. There you go. And I'm going to start just walking through one by one. Okay, so myth number 1. We are in this world to suffer. So we hear that sometimes. So yeah, this is a heavy world. This is a world of pain. This is a world of suffering. I am here to suffer and all of those things. So it's very heavy. Is there pain in the world? Absolutely. Does every human being experience pain? Absolutely, right? So there are pains that we see. What do we see? We see if somebody's unhealthy, right? So we can see disease, we can see sickness. We can also see lack of resources, especially financial resources. We see homeless people, hungry, and all of those things. So these are things that we see, but there are also things that we don't see and we all experience. We all have our share of pain, of frustration, of disappointments and losses. That is something that being in this world, we have to go through. All of us have a different shares. We don't see what other people go through. And so it's easy to think, oh, I'm the only one that suffers. Nobody else has these things, but we all do. And we also know that depression is a growing concern. Mental health is a growing concern. So this is all part of pain and suffering. But the point here is, are we in this world to suffer? Is that the point, right? So let's see. One thing I always like to think about that makes me happy is if you were really put in this planet to suffer, would God give us such a beautiful planet? Like every day, every sunset we look at is almost like a painting in the sky, right? We have flowers, we have birds, we have waterfalls, we have mountains, we have a lot of beautiful things. So we know our planet is not the most evolved planet. If we study, and that explains in the Spirit's book all the hierarchy of the planets, at least the ones that we know here in our solar system. However, we have a lot of beauty and a lot of things to enjoy, right? So let's talk about, again, let's go to the chapter 5 of this book. It's called Blessed Are the Afflicted, and is the biggest chapter in this book. And then we talk about, and then we're going to look into, is earth a place of punishment, right? On item number 7, there's a sentence that really caught me and the first time I studied it, that says, man must never forget that he, and here I'm always talking he as generic, right? Could be he or she, finds himself in an inferior world to which he is confined exclusively due to his imperfections. And then I like this picture here because it's the world, but is looking within. So the point here is, okay, by the laws of God and the laws of affinity, the laws of the universe, we are where we belong. Where do we belong? Where we have affinity of vibration. So the point here is, why is the world bad? Am I here to suffer? The point here is, why do I belong to this planet? So we have some affinity with the things that we're seeing here. So if we don't like violence, crime, injustice, corruption, we have some of those within us in a different capacity, in a different form, or else we wouldn't be allowed to be in this sphere. And that is the whole point, is to look into all of that and look inside and say, what are the things that I need to fix? What are the tendencies, potentialities, maybe things that are hidden in there that need to be worked on? Because remember, the biggest invitation of Spiritism is self-development, is self-reflection, self-purification. It's all of that understanding. We need that knowledge. We need that pondering, that debate, to reason with the different things. But the point is myself. What am I doing with my existence? And where do I bring myself to being a better person, right? So that is point number one. And then we're going to look, why do we suffer, right? If we're not here to suffer, then why do we suffer? And there are a couple of things here, and I'm picking now in two different books. One of them is Still the Gospel, which says pain, and I'm sorry I didn't translate this part, pain is the medication, is the medicine that cure our soul. So a lot of times is a healing mechanism that we have to experience some adverse circumstances. And we know that because we see a lot of very successful people saying, oh, thank God that happened to me because he made me a better person. He made me think differently. So sometimes is life pushing us to a different direction. And in a book that I'm going to talk about in a minute, that is about St. Francis, he says we are mostly, the majority of us are inferior souls in need of education and discipline. And for now, Earth is still the best school, the best home, and the best hospital to our souls, right? So you see here, when we are in a process, and we can think of the people that practice sports and need to go through a very rigorous, training, it is not fun, it's not easy. The coach will be tough. He will force that athlete to focus on the things that they need to improve, not the things they're already good at. Same thing in school. We get more homework and we get more activities and where we lack understanding and we don't like it because we just want to study the things that we're good at. So here is talking about a school and a hospital. That is a different definition and a different way to see things. The Chinese have a proverb that says, no man is your enemy, no man is your friend, every man is your teacher. So if we're here to learn, if we're here to experience things, and life in its perfection will present us with the circumstances and the mechanisms that will either unlock some potentials or will help us learn something, we can have a different view of life. So we're not going to be having, say, oh, I'm here to suffer, everything is bad, there's no need, I'm not even no use in looking for joy because everything is, no, I'm saying, well, interesting, this is showing up second time. I experienced this similar circumstance over and over. What is it trying to teach me? What can I learn from it? That is a different way to look at things, right? There's another book from Humberto de Campos called Brazil, the Heart of the World. And in that book, he talks about something that's very nice to pay attention to. He says, if you really look into nature, there's a self-healing mechanism, right? You cut a tree, the tree will grow back. There's a storm that comes and destroys things, and then it's going to be life, it's going to be more, vegetation and flowers and all of them, coming out of it. You cut your finger, it's going to, heal and it's going to get better. So there in nature, there's kind of a healing mechanism. and we need to trust the mechanism that things are going to be coming for the better, and it's going to, there's a process that will lead us to a better place. So I kind of like that. So this is myth number one. And when we think about are we here in this world to suffer? We're going to say no. That's not what we're going to talk about. We are in this world to educate our spirits, to heal the wounds of our souls, and above all, to become closer to God. And I like this picture here of the babies because mistakes are part of the process. We get very frustrated, especially when we get into a spiritual path, that we want to say, I'll never make mistakes again. Not possible. We're all continue to make mistakes until the last day, in this existence, because that's part of our humanity. We are fallible. We make mistakes. We can be misguided sometimes. The point is how we approach things, our ability to self-reflect, our ability to recognize, repair what we've done when we've done something wrong, and learn from it so we can be better next time. That is the process. That's the journey that we're here in. And I like the story between, we heard that last year, the story in a museum, the story between Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, because they were alive at about the same time. Leonardo da Vinci was older. And here we see the different approaches, and I think it represents very well how we sometimes approach life. So Michelangelo, they were both, brilliant people. They are both, renowned for what they've done. Michelangelo was very strict. He was very rigorous. He would only carve a certain type of marble and stone, and it had to be done in a certain way because he was always looking for that perfection. But it's in a different way, because when Jesus said, be perfect, he didn't say be a perfectionist, which is how we interpret it. Perfectionism is rigid, is stuff, and being perfect is looking for that self-reflection, is that process. And Leonardo da Vinci was much more a joyful person. He, and there was a little bit of a jealousy between them. And even Michelangelo didn't understand, like, why do you like this old man? Because he was fun. And for Leonardo da Vinci, it wasn't about being perfect. And you can see here in this painting, I don't know if you can see the details because it was X-ray, and you can see the head of the horses was in 3 different places. So he was much more involved with the learning process. He was much more involved with the discovery than the actual looking for that perfection. That can be a little bit of perfectionism, that can be a bit, an illusion. So here his attention point was in the learning. And this is a nice story to remind us that we are here to learn. So rather than looking for what is the perfect answer, what have I learned from this situation? How can I be prepared, a little bit better from next time? What are the things that I can reflect on? How can I, the curiosity that'll help us learn, and that will make life a little bit lighter. So that was myth number 1. We're not here to suffer. We experience suffering. It's part of life, but we're not here to suffer. We're here to grow and to develop and to get to know ourselves better in that process. Myth number two, that's something else that we hear. Oh, I'm a bad person and I'm paying for it. These things are happening because I deserve it, because I've done wrong in the past, and I'm here and I'm going to pay for it. Another very heavy myth, right? So let's talk about that one for a minute. Again, chapter 5. And the question here is it possible to be happy on earth? The first thing they explain to us is the absolute happiness is only going to happen when the world really all, together becomes happy, when we all become pure souls, right? When we get rid of all this, the things that we've been bringing with us for a long time, that we see that causes all these things out there, right? Wars, and we're creating disputes and all sorts of things that are not nice. However, right, and then number 23, it says the complete happiness doesn't exist on earth, even because, how can any of us be completely happy if we see somebody suffering, if we see somebody going through injustice. It's not possible, because we want everybody to be equally happy. We're not in that place. So that type of happiness is not there now. However, this is the point here. Man could enjoy a relative happiness if he did not search for it within perishable things, but within himself. The only real happiness in this world is to be found in a heartfelt peace. So it's to be in peace with ourselves, peace with our surroundings, and peace with the decisions that we make. So even if they're good or bad, and say, look, this is the best I could do, I'm going to do better now. And being in that process, being along with that, right? Then he goes forward to say, so I invite everybody to read the whole chapter. I'm just getting here little pieces of that, which I thought were, the highlights. Many torments could be avoided by those who are content with what they have, who can see things they don't possess without envy, and do not try to appear to be more than they are. Again, right? There's a lot. We live in a world that's what you have, what you do, and that anxiety is not happiness, right? It's just being who we are. Doesn't mean that we need to sit here. That's what life gave me, and not try to have anything better. We have to try. Well, let's try to have better things. Let's try to have better jobs. Let's try to be in better shape and all of that. But is that anxiety that comes from the envy of what other people do, that tries to compare ourselves to other people all the time? That is what causes that unhappiness at the end, right? It's just being, look, I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm going to be grateful for this. There's no problem in trying to be more, trying to get better, but is that thing, competitiveness, that anxiety that never ends, right? And then he talks about the causes of the present day affliction, especially in Spiritism, because we believe in multiple lives. It's always easy to blame the last life. Oh, my last life wasn't so good, so I'm being punished now. And here they make it very clear to say, and I was looking also at the Spirits book, which is a book of questions and answers. In question 921, it says that we're not going to, again, it says we're not going to be fully happy until humanity is fully transformed. But most times, man is the creator of his own unhappiness. If we were to practice the laws of God, we could spare ourselves from a lot of frustrations and a lot of unhappiness, and we could enjoy of happiness as a happiness that is allowed in this plane, right? So we could have a relative happiness if we were not creating. So a lot of things, the conflicts with people, the conflicts with ourselves, over judgment, over demanding, trying to be who we are not. All of those things are just created by ourselves. We think it's life, we think it's God, we think it's karma, but we are creating it. And they say that many times, like, you are complaining about things that you are doing to yourself, nobody else is, right? And then here in item 13, it says, man can soften or increase the bitterness of his trials according to the manner in which he regards earthly life. Even if there's something that we have to go through, our attitude can soften, can ease our pain. So we still have a lot of control points into this whole process, and we tend to forget that. So it's a good point of reflection. This is a story that I heard from Marshall Rosenberg. Is one of his YouTube videos, a man that I very much like, that he used to talk about the language of the giraffe. So his whole thing was nonviolent communication, and how if we were to speak the language of love, we would be a lot more impactful and successful in our relationships. So he was giving one of his talks. Afterwards, this lady came to him and said, yeah, my children and my husband, they're all ungrateful. They don't appreciate me. They don't value me. Can you believe that I've been cooking them for a number of years? I don't know, like 20 years, and I don't even like cooking. Every day I've been doing that. So she was very frustrated. Clearly saw herself in a position that she was the victim of it, that something was being done to her. Very angry, very in a state of disappointment. And he said, well, you need to talk to your family, right? If this is how you feel. And then things went on. So he was kind of thinking about, I wonder what happened to this woman. I wonder what how she talked to her family and all of those things. So some time passed by. He went back into that city, and he was giving a talk, and somebody came talk to him and said, you talked to my mother some time ago about her cooking and all of that. He said, yeah. And he asked, did your mom come home that day and talk to you? She said, yeah, she did. And what did she say? She said, she didn't like cooking, and she didn't want to cook to us anymore. And how did you react? She said, oh, we all went to thank God for that, because she was always upset. She was resentful of having to cook for us all the time. She complained about it. Her food was even that good. And he said, we can take care of it from then on. So I like that story because it represents how sometimes we think we're doing something, you're sacrificing for somebody, but if that's not an act of love, people are not appreciating it because it doesn't come across as something good. So she was putting that burden for years and years and years, cooking without wanting, putting herself in that miserable state, and her kids and her husband prefer that she wouldn't even do that. So that is something for us to think about. The things that are really hurting us or bothering us, is it being posed by others or is it being posed by ourselves? Something for us to think. Another aspect that comes out in chapter 5 is voluntary trials. Because we believe in the laws of cause and effect, because we know that we're here in multiple existence in an evolutionary journey, it's very easy to look at somebody, and I've heard that many times, to say, this person is doing this is because they did something wrong in the past. That's what we can judge that, right? It says here, it is not to be thought, however, that all suffering in this world denotes the existence of a determined shortcoming. So we can't say, oh, this person broke his leg today is because they broke somebody else's leg in a past life. We can't say that kind of thing. So you have to stop with that math. Many times it is simply requested by the person himself, which will help him towards purification and active progress. The way I see this is as we go through school, we have a fixed curriculum in elementary school. We don't make any choices. As we start to become more mature, so we can look at our spiritual journey in different stages, we are in a position to say, in my next life, I don't want to have that condition, because that condition usually leads me to more mistakes, and I want to be focused on that. So I really want to develop that element of my life, and I want to have that deprived maybe from a lot of money or deprived from other things that I want to do that. So that is a choice that the person will make. The more mature we become spiritually, the more say we have in the conditions that we're going to be, because we know what we need to accomplish in that lifetime, right? So we cannot judge for other people. And here's a story that this is a book from St. Francis, right? That talks about his life. I love that book. I don't think that book is available in English, unfortunately. But it's in PDF in Portuguese on Google. You can find it. In that book, St. Francis had healing powers, and he would heal people from time to time. And he tells the story about this monk that had leprosy. So St. Francis was able to, with his hands, to, put his hands over it and cure him and heal him. And sometime later, the monk came to talk to St. Francis. And he said, look, I have a very violent temperament. I have anger outbursts. And I need the disease to help heal my spirit. It was helping me. Would you please allow that condition to come back? I need it. So see that I was very impressed with the maturity looking into something that was physical and understanding the role he played into making his soul better. Because that's at the end of all the matters, is what are we doing to our souls? That's what's going to come out of this lifetime, is how much we love, how much we care, how prepared we are, how resilient we have become, how understanding of life have we become. That's why all that's all about. All the rest of the stuff's going to stay behind. And he was able to see this. And St. Francis, just put his hand on him, and then, that came back. So it's a very beautiful story, because that, it demystifies that punishment, that thing, God is doing something wrong with him. No, he's saying, I need this. I need this now. It's helping me out. So are we going to say I'm a bad person and I pay for it? No. We're going to say we are imperfect souls. Sometimes we're misguided, and life presents us with the necessary conditions for our development. And sometimes they're tough and challenging conditions. And I like here the diamond, right? So we're all like getting chiseled a little bit and kind of shaping ourselves, as we go through our life experience. Myth number 3. And that is very popular in Spiritism, because Spiritism also describes what happens in the afterlife. So I'm afraid of it. I read books about these bad things that happen. There was something bad's going to happen to me. I don't want to go to this place or to that place that I read in that book, and all of that. So let's talk about what should we be afraid of. There's a book called Memoirs of a Suicide. It was written by a Portuguese writer, and is about his experience. So he was a writer that found out that he became blind, and he was turning blind, and he became so desperate because he wouldn't be able to write anymore, that he killed himself. And that describes the experience in the afterlife of how he experienced that. And, very sad, of course, because, he went through a lot of torments, and, until he could figure out what was happening, and eventually he helped and all that. And in this book, it is explained that after passing, a soul goes into a region whose characteristics will correspond to his vibratory and mental states. Again, laws of attraction, laws of affinity. The only control point that we have is how we feel, how we vibrate, and we're going to be immediately attracted to alikes. And that could be a more pleasant or less pleasant experience depending on those states. Such be the character, the actions performed, the lifestyle, the type of death of a person, such will be the time and conditions of such place. So again, we'll be just transported to, those things. So what should we be really afraid of? It's up to us, right? One of the Spiritist books, like I mentioned, there were 5, right? I have here the cover in Portuguese, and I'll explain why. This book is available in English. It's called Heaven and Hell. This was the older cover, and the one that we had at home when I was growing up. The reason why I like that cover is because I believe this image explains the entire book. The whole point of the book is, don't expect a tribunal, a jury, a judge to come after you. Heaven and hell is what we make out of it. So this book has a lot of different spirits coming back and explaining their after-death experience, and their experience is all about what they've done. Some in deep state of regret and sorrow, others in joy, and they would just explain that the only thing they had to account for and experience is what they created, and they were only confronted by their own conscience, nothing else. So basically, we create what we think, and heaven and hell are not defined spaces, but states of mind. As we like to think, above is heaven, below is hell, we had all that stuff. No, it's about that. So I am afraid of hell. Let's demystify that. Heaven and hell are within us, even now on earth. We can choose a life of peace, a life of torment. It's our choosing. In the afterlife is the same. So we need to stop talking about what we're afraid of, where we don't want to go. Is who we want to be, because who we are will determine the experiences that we have in this lifetime and also the other one. So myth number 4, we only have 2 more now. I have to perform grandiose acts. Oh, being the spiritual path. Oh, I need to be Mother Teresa. I need to help millions of people. I need to do a lot of big things. Do we really need to do that? Is that what we're here for? Or is that an ego-driven drive that wants to make us that important and that relevant? So let's think about that for a minute. There's a story from Humberto de Campos. He was an author and sent as many messages from, the afterlife. He was a journalist, a reporter. And that's a tale that he tells about João Mateus. And the story goes that João Mateus fell asleep, had a dream. In the dream, he saw somebody with an inventory, a report about him. And he got very curious. He says, "Can I read this?" And he said, "Sure." He had a very detailed inventory about when he was born, who was his parents, how loving his parents were in his childhood, what kind of childhood he had, what kind of education he had. And then he tells him that he went in more than 2,000 meetings on the Spiritist groups. And he talked and he gave speeches and talks. And he wrote pages and pages, helping people, and how they would feel and educating them, blah, 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 blah. So he had a lot of big, big things that he was doing. And then as he kept on reading, he said he didn't have time for his children. He didn't have patience with his neighbors. He was very resistant to anyone who would give him any input that would help him on his self-development or self-reflection. He would never pay attention if he offended someone or act in a way that would be hurtful to others. He was insensitive and went on and on and on. So he read this in shock because he was doing all the big things and the big show things and, helping the poor and, things that people look at him and so this is a very good man, but he wasn't doing the basics to his family, to his friends, to himself. And he said, I need to change my life. I need to change my attitude. I need to be more compassionate. I need to be more attentive. He woke up and he told his friends, "Come here because I want to make a plan. I want to change my way of life." And when they came to his house that night, he had passed away. So he ran out of time to do the right things. So this is a little bit of a reflection about, I want to do grandiose things. I want to be in this. And do we really? There's a book from Leon Denis that's talk about the problems of our destiny and of pain. And it's a very philosophical book that talks about the role of pain in our lives and our, evolution. Beautifully written by this French philosopher. And he said, the man's most important job is towards his advancement. So it's not about those big splashy things, because that's also a way for us to the day I have that much money, the day I retire and have that much time, that day will never come. Every day is an opportunity to perform small acts with consistency, with discipline, and the will to serve. Every person we encounter, every situation we are in, we can look at somebody and say, how can I help you? How can I serve? St. Francis, in his prayer, he says, God, let me be an instrument of your peace. Every moment we can choose to be an instrument of peace or disturbance. It's our choice every day. But sometimes it's those little acts, it's the little things, the little blessings that we can bring to people. Some of them go unnoticed. Some of them we didn't even know. But they can grow into big, big doings later on. So let's think about that. Little things every day. I like this quote from Mother Teresa that she says, we are unable to do big things, but we can do little things with a lot of love. And she knew how to do them, didn't she? And then is the last myth. That's a very dangerous myth for people that are in the path of spirituality, that believe in the laws of cause and effect and say, that person's suffering, they're paying for what they've done. Let them be. That's harsh. We have to be very careful to say these things. And also in chapter 5, item 27, there's this discussion. Should we end our neighbor's trial or just let them suffer? Because, God is perfect. God gave them the pain. Let them live the pain. He says, never say it is God's justice and must follow its course. Never say that. Rather say, let me see what means of our merciful Father has given me so I may lessen the suffering of my brother or my sister. Let me see if moral consolations, material help, or advice can assist in overcoming these trials with greater energy, patience, and resignation. I think that explains it all, right? Am I in this person's life? Maybe I can be an instrument. Maybe I just can be a support, give an advice, give a good word, listen. I mean, it's so important to just listen to somebody, right? When we work with mental health, one of the things, number one, if we can just listen to each other 1 minute, let the person, we don't need to judge, we don't need to justify, we don't need to, this is not a big deal. No, just listen and say, yeah, I can see you're in pain and all of that, right? Ask if God has given you the means of putting an end to one's suffering. Perhaps this opportunity is a test or even an atonement, so that you may ease these troubles and substitute them with peace. Therefore, always help each other mutually in your respective trials and never consider yourself an instrument of torture. So we're here to help each other. And that's part of our own healing and self-development, right? So to be compassionate and to be loving. And that story here that I heard this a long time ago, and it's about 2 monks that were, walking a long path. They had a long journey to get to town, and they were walking. And at some point, they ran into a small baby that was just left there. And it was clear that if they did nothing, the baby would just die. And they said, look, we have no food. We have no horses. It's just the 2 of us. We have a long road ahead. It's going to be a cold night. We can take this baby. And the other one said, I cannot leave this baby. And he said, well, if you want to take the baby, your responsibility. I'm not going to wait for you. I have, go and, you're on your own. He said, that's fine. If you want to walk faster, you go ahead. I'll see what I can do with the baby. I'll try to save him and I on this. So they got separated. The man with the baby, after a long night of walk and it was very cold, he made it to town. And after he made it to town, he got some rest. He made sure the baby was cared for and, some people helped him. The next day he went out and looked for his other monk. He said, well, he must have, where is he? Nobody knew. No, he didn't make it. He said, not possible. He was ahead of me. He should have got here earlier. No. We can't see him. So he went back and they went looking for him. And at some point they found him on the path. I think he got tired and he sat down and he was frozen because it was a very cold night. So he died. And at that moment, the other monk understood that because he had the baby held him warm. So as he was saving the baby was saving him. So the point of reflection here is sometimes we think we're doing something for somebody, but in reality, we're doing something for ourselves because we're going to benefit more from that deed than we know at the time of doing it. So I thought that was a beautiful story. So here's our last myth. This person is paying for what he and she has done. And the thing is, he who eases the pain of his brother will have his own pain relieved, right? Sometimes this is the act of love. We are the biggest recipient of any love we give because inevitably it will come back to us. So I hope you have enjoyed the myths of Spiritism. I hope we have collected a couple of points here to reflect, to ponder, to consider, to pay attention, the way we talk, the way we think, the way we process information, and we can use this beautiful life opportunity to continue to develop and grow ourselves. Thank you for being with me. Please read this book, Chapter 5, recommend it. Let's say, put it here. It is a lot to think about. Thank you so much, and have a great week.